London, January 1880. The city is already the most powerful metropolis on earth. It is also, quietly, killing its own residents by the thousands, and nobody seems particularly bothered. What descended on London that winter wasn't ordinary fog. Londoners had a word for what they actually breathed: pea souper. Named for its yellow-green color, the precise shade of split pea soup, it was a toxic mixture of coal smoke, sulfur dioxide, and raw sewage vapor, all trapped beneath a layer of cold air that simply refused to move. This particular event lasted from the 26th to the 30th of January, 5 days. In those 5 days, somewhere between 700 and 1,200 people died directly from the air itself. Later analysis would revise that figure considerably higher, once researchers accounted for delayed deaths in the weeks that followed. The mechanism was almost elegant in its brutality. Cold air settled over the city like a lid on a pot. Warm, polluted air couldn't rise. Every coal fire, and there were millions of them, in homes, factories, railway engines, gasworks, pumped sulfur dioxide directly into a sealed atmospheric container. The sulfur dioxide then combined with moisture in the fog to form dilute sulfuric acid. Londoners were, quite literally, breathing acid. Visibility dropped to a matter of feet. Theatre performances were cancelled because audiences inside the buildings couldn't see the stage through the smog that had seeped through the doors. The Natural History Museum, which had opened just the year before, reported staff unable to see across its great hall. Cattle at the Smithfield Livestock Show suffocated entirely, and several prize oxen had to be slaughtered early as an act of mercy. Somehow, however, this was not considered a crisis. The Times reported the fog with something approaching mild inconvenience. Victorian London accepted mass death by air pollution the way we accept traffic delays. Annoying, inevitable, probably someone else's problem. The city had been here before. The 1873 smog had killed around 700 people. The 1866 one killed many before that. Each event was mourned briefly, attributed vaguely to the weather, and then forgotten. Coal was the engine of empire. Suggesting London burn less of it was roughly equivalent to suggesting it stop being London altogether. There was, however, one man trying to make noise about it. Dr. Henry Antoine Deveux, a physician and anti-pollution campaigner, is actually the man credited with coining the word smog, a portmanteau of smoke and fog, which he introduced at a public health conference in 1905. He'd been watching events like this his entire career, and was, frankly, furious. His fury changed relatively little in the short term. London would continue to choke periodically for another 7 decades. The great irony of the 1880 event is that it is almost entirely forgotten, overshadowed by the 1952 Great Smog, which killed somewhere between 4,000 and 12,000 people in 4 days, and finally forced Parliament to act with the Clean Air Act of 1956. But here's the twist that history doesn't dwell on enough. The 1952 smog was, chemically, almost identical to the 1881. Same coal, same cold air, same sulfuric acid. 72 years apart, the science hadn't changed. The danger hadn't changed. What changed was that, by 1952, Londoners owned televisions, and the smog was stopping the television signal. You can endure 1,000 deaths in the fog. Apparently, you cannot endure a disrupted broadcast of Gardening Club. Victorian London was the richest city in the world, and it suffocated its poorest residents with the byproduct of that wealth, season after season, with the quiet efficiency of a bureaucratic process. The 1880 smog didn't shock the city into action. Nothing did. Until the fog had the audacity to inconvenience the middle classes. Some things, it turns out, never really change. Only the thing being interrupted does.